My best friend tried to sabotage my marriage. I still don't know exactly why, but I've pieced enough together to know I'll never trust her again. Let me back up. I moved to a new country when I was 11. My family didn't know anyone. My sister-in-law introduced me to Sarah and we clicked instantly. She became my anchor in a strange place. We did everything together: sleepovers, school projects, first crushes. When I turned 16, she was the first person I told about my now husband. She was at my wedding holding my bouquet. She was in the delivery room when I had my son. I made her his godmother. We were supposed to be sisters for life. Now we're both 29. My husband is 31. We have a 2-year-old boy and life is busy but good. I work in an office from 9 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon with a 30-minute break. Sometimes I grab a second breakfast at a cafe. Sometimes I walk the 5 minutes to my husband's office and eat with him. Occasionally I have to travel for work to another city. It's not a big deal, and I mention these trips to Sarah in casual conversation. She always seemed interested, asking where I was going when I'd be back. I thought she just cared. Last week, Tuesday night, a red alert came through. Severe weather was predicted for Wednesday: heavy rain, possible flooding. My work trip to another city got canceled. I was actually glad. I stayed home with my son. My husband woke up at 6 in the morning to go secure his business and put up flood barriers. He was back by 7:30 making breakfast for the three of us. The rain didn't even start until 1 in the afternoon. Spent the whole day together playing blocks, watching cartoons, napping on the couch. It was a perfect, boring family day. At 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Sarah, are you home already? It's flooding where you were supposed to be." I typed back, "Home safe, we stayed in." She replied with a thumbs up emoji. I didn't think anything of it. We didn't go out until Friday. Saturday morning, Sarah and I have the same gym class. After we finished, she grabbed my arm. "We need to talk in private." My stomach dropped. She looked serious, almost excited. We walked to my car and got in. She turned to face me and then she said it. "On Wednesday, I saw your husband with a woman. They were making out, and your kid was in the car." I just stared at her. My brain went blank for a second, then everything came rushing back. The red alert, the canceled trip, my husband coming home at 7:30, pancakes, cartoons, naps, the three of us together the entire day. I asked her 3 times, "Are you sure it was this Wednesday?" "Yes," she said each time, her voice getting more impatient. "About what time?" 11 in the morning. "And it was during the red alert?" "Yes." I asked if she was 100% sure. That's when she launched into a full description. My husband, she said, was in a silver car parked outside a coffee shop. He was kissing a tall blonde woman, the kind of woman who looked like a Barbie doll, and my son was in the back seat watching. I sat there in my car in the gym parking lot and I felt 2 things at once. One, absolute relief because I knew she was lying. My husband was home with me at 11 a.m. My son was in his high chair smearing yogurt on his tray. I had the photo on my phone to prove it. 2, pure disbelief. This was Sarah, my best friend for 18 years. She was trying to blow up my life. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I looked at her and said, "That's weird." Because my husband was home with me all day Wednesday, we didn't leave the house. Her face did this thing, like she was caught off guard but trying to recover. She blinked and said, "Oh, maybe it was a different day. You said Wednesday 3 times, I asked you to confirm." Well, maybe I got the day wrong. I just nodded and told her I had to go. I drove home, walked inside, and found my husband playing with our son on the living room floor. I sat down next to him and told him everything. His face went pale, then red. He wanted to call her right then. I told him to wait. I needed to think. For the next few days, I replayed every conversation I'd had with Sarah over the last year. Her comments about how hard it must be to be married so young. How she said my husband was too perfect and that I should keep an eye on him. How she'd started asking about my travel schedule more and more. I thought she was being a good friend, checking in. Now I realized she was collecting information. She needed to know when I'd be out of town so she could paint a picture of my husband cheating. The thing is, I travel for work maybe once or twice a month. It's not a big deal. But if I had actually been out of town last Wednesday, if that red alert hadn't happened, her story might have had a sliver of plausibility. I would have been 2 hours away. My husband would have been home with our son, and she would have told me she saw him with someone else. I would have had doubts. Maybe not enough to leave him, but enough to fight, enough to hurt. I confronted her the next day. I drove to her apartment. She opened the door with a smile that faded when she saw my face. I told her I needed the truth. She stuck to her story for about 2 minutes, then I showed her the time-stamped photos from Wednesday morning. My husband making pancakes, my son in his high chair, me on the couch with coffee, all taken before noon. She broke, she started crying and said she didn't know why she did it. She said she was jealous. I had the perfect life, the husband, the kid, the job, and she felt left behind. She thought if she could make me doubt my marriage, I'd lean on her more. We'd go back to how we were in high school, just the two of us against the world. I told her she'd been single for too long and she needed therapy, not my husband's destruction. She said she was sorry. I said sorry didn't cut it. I left her standing in her doorway and I haven't spoken to her since. Our mutual friends are split. Some say I'm overreacting. She just made a mistake. She was drunk. She didn't mean it. Others have cut her off completely. I don't know if I'll ever get a full explanation. Maybe she really doesn't understand why she did it. But I do know one thing, I'll never trust her again. 18 years of friendship gone because she wanted to be the center of my world and couldn't stand that I had one without her. That's not the only story I've heard about people trying to wreck someone's relationship. It reminds me of what happened to a friend of mine. Well, not exactly a friend, let's call him Peter. He's 37, his husband, we'll call him Mark, is 27. They've been married 3 years, together for 6. They have a 7-year-old son, Jack, who Mark adopted after they got married. Mark loves that kid like his own blood. And Peter's family, they never accepted their marriage. Peter is bisexual. His ex-wife Allison, also 37, is still very much in the picture because Peter's mother refuses to let her go. The whole family is homophobic in that polite, passive-aggressive way. They're always telling Peter he should get back with Allison, that his marriage to Mark is a phase, that Jack needs a real mother. It's disgusting. Jack's 7th birthday party was at Peter's family's house in their hometown. Mark didn't want to go, but Jack begged him. He wanted both his dads there, so Mark agreed. He spent the whole day playing with Jack and his cousins, making sure the kid had the best birthday ever. And then in the middle of the cake cutting, he noticed Peter and Allison were gone. He went inside to look for them, checked the living room, the kitchen, the bathroom. Then he went upstairs. Peter's old bedroom door was cracked open. Mark pushed it open and saw them, Peter and Allison, taking their clothes off, about to do it in his childhood bed. Mark stood there for a second. He told me later he felt like the air was sucked out of the room. But he didn't scream, he didn't run in and fight. He just turned around, walked back downstairs, and helped Jack cut the cake. He smiled for photos. He thanked the guests for coming. He did not let his son see a single crack in his facade. When everyone was leaving, Peter and Allison finally came back downstairs. Peter pulled Mark aside and said, "You shouldn't have cut the cake without me, that was disrespectful." Mark looked at him and said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." Peter went quiet. Mark took Jack and left. He drove to a hotel, put Jack to bed, and then sat in the bathroom and cried silently so his son wouldn't hear. The next morning, Peter showed up. He apologized. He said Allison had cornered him, that his mother had orchestrated the whole thing. He said it meant nothing, that he loved Mark, that he would cut them all off for good. Mark didn't believe him, but he also didn't want to upend Jack's life, so he said they'd try counseling. Peter agreed. They went for 3 sessions. Peter seemed sincere. Then Mark found out that Peter's mother was still inviting Allison to family dinners. He found out that Peter was still going. He found out that Peter had been texting Allison every day for weeks. The last I heard, Mark had filed for divorce. He was fighting for full custody of Jack. Peter's family was spreading rumors that Mark was abusive, that he was keeping Jack from his real mother. But Mark had receipts. He had recordings. He had the text messages. And Jack had told his school counselor that he wanted to stay with his dad, his real dad, the one who tucked him in every night. The update from a few months ago was brutal. Mark discovered that Peter and Allison had actually been seeing each other for over a year. The affair started when Jack was 6. And here's the sick part, Peter's family knew. They helped cover it up. They would take Jack for weekends so Peter could go to Allison's apartment. They told Mark it was just family time, but the worst part, Mark found out that Peter's ex-wife wasn't just an ex. She was his first love, his high school sweetheart. They'd been together since they were teenagers. She was the one who left him because he came out as bi. She said she couldn't be with a man who wanted men. Then, after he married Mark, she suddenly wanted him back. And Peter's family encouraged it because they'd rather he be with a woman, any woman, than with a man. Mark said in his final post that he was done. He was getting therapy for himself and for Jack. He was moving to a different state. He wasn't going to let his son grow up thinking this was what love looked like. I think about that sometimes. How people will tear apart someone else's happiness because it doesn't fit their idea of how things should be. Sarah wanted me all to herself. Peter's family wanted him straight. Both of them tried to destroy families to get what they wanted, and both of them failed. But the damage was done. And if you think that's messed up, wait until you hear what happened to me at work. I have a chronic pain condition. It's not something you can see, which is the problem. On a good day, I'm at a 4 on the pain scale. On a bad day, I'm at a 7. On those days, I use a cane. I have a handicap placard for my car, and I have all the proper paperwork filed with my job so I can get accommodations if I need them. I work 2 jobs. My full-time gig is a desk job. My part-time job is an assistant coordinator role at a different company. I took it because I like staying busy, it helps with my anxiety, and the extra money goes straight to savings. I don't want a promotion there. I don't even really need the job, I just enjoy it. My colleague Casey does not enjoy it. Casey wants my boss's job, everyone knows it. Casey has been angling for a promotion for years, and when I showed up, someone with a disability who didn't even want to move up, it drove Casey crazy. It started with little comments. "You're so lucky you can work from home on your bad days. Must be nice to have a handicap spot right by the door. I wish I could just take breaks whenever I needed." I ignored it. I figured Casey was just bitter. Then Casey started taking photos of me. At first I thought I was being paranoid. I'd catch Casey with a phone pointed at me and then quickly lowering it. But one day I was sitting in my car in the handicap spot waiting for the pain in my back to ease up enough to walk inside. I saw Casey across the parking lot, phone out, clearly recording me. I called my boss, Amy, and told her what was happening. She said she'd handle it. Amy talked to Casey. Casey denied it, said I was being sensitive. Amy believed me, but without proof, she couldn't do much more than warn Casey to stay professional. It escalated. Casey started parking near my spot and taking video of me getting out of my car. On days when I used my cane, Casey would film. On days when I didn't, Casey would film that too. Then Casey compiled it all and sent it to HR with a note saying I was faking my disability. HR called me in. They asked if I had documentation. I gave them my doctor's note, my handicap placard registration, and my accommodation paperwork. They said they'd review everything. A week later, they told me Casey's complaint was unfounded, but Casey didn't stop. Casey started following me after work. I'd see the same car in my rearview mirror turning where I turned, parking a few spaces away at the grocery store. I called the police. They said there wasn't much they could do unless Casey threatened me directly. I filed a report anyway. Then Casey showed up at a park where I was walking with a friend, sat on a bench with a phone aimed at us. My friend asked what was going on. I told her. She walked over to Casey and demanded the phone. Casey refused. My friend called the cops. A squad car showed up and Casey told them I was a fraud and they needed to expose the truth. The cops told Casey to leave. Casey left, but not before yelling that I was a liar and a cheat and a disgrace to real disabled people. I went back to HR. I told Amy everything. She was horrified. She escalated it to corporate. Within a week, Casey was put on administrative leave while they investigated. I found out later that Casey had been doing this to other coworkers too. Anyone who got accommodations Casey didn't think they deserved. I was just the most recent target. The update came 3 weeks ago. Casey was fired, and HR offered me a permanent remote position if I wanted it. I took it. I'm not going to spend my life looking over my shoulder because someone else is insecure. But the thing that sticks with me, Casey genuinely believed I was faking, not because there was any evidence, not because a doctor said so, but because Casey needed it to be true. Casey needed to believe that the only reason I had an accommodation was fraud. Otherwise, Casey would have to face the fact that life isn't fair, that some people struggle more, and that success isn't a linear path. That's the thread running through all of this. Sarah needed to believe my husband was cheating so she could feel better about being single. Peter's family needed to believe he wasn't really gay so they could pretend their son was normal. Casey needed to believe I was faking so the world made sense. People will rewrite reality to avoid their own pain. And sometimes they'll try to rewrite yours too. But there's more to each of these stories than I've told you so far. The fallout didn't end with the initial confrontation. Every single one of them dragged on for months, and I want to give you the full picture. Take Sarah. After I told my husband what she tried to pull, he was furious. He wanted to call her, scream at her, but I begged him to let me handle it. I sent her a long text. I said, "You know I was home that day. You know my husband was with me, so why would you lie about seeing him with another woman?" She didn't answer for 3 days. Then she sent me a voice note. I still have it saved in my phone. She was crying. She said she was sorry. She said she saw a man in a car that looked like my husband, with a kid that looked like mine, and she just assumed. She said she panicked and then doubled down. But here's the thing, my husband drives a beat-up gray sedan. The guy she described was in a black SUV. My kid was wearing a bright red jacket that day, not the blue one she mentioned. She got every detail wrong because she made it all up. I asked her point blank why. She didn't have an answer, so I blocked her, but that wasn't the end. She started texting my husband, telling him I was paranoid, that I needed help. He showed me the messages. One of them said, "I didn't want her to get hurt. I was trying to protect her. You're not good enough for her and you know it." My husband laughed. He said, "She's been jealous of you since we got married. Remember how she used to call me the lucky one in a sarcastic voice?" I did remember. I just never put it together. Then the mutual friends got involved. Sarah told them I cut her off for no reason. She played the victim. I lost 2 friends who believed her. One of them wrote me a long message saying I was being dramatic, that Sarah was just looking out for me. I sent back the screenshots. The friend apologized but said she still thought I was overreacting. I told her to have a nice life. It hurt, but it also clarified who my real friends were. I've got my husband and my kid in a small circle now. That's enough. And Mark's story. It got even worse before it got better. After he filed for divorce, Peter's mother went nuclear. She called Child Protective Services and reported Mark for emotional abuse. She claimed Mark was keeping Jack from his real mother, meaning Allison. The caseworker came to the house. Mark had to sit through a 2-hour interview where he explained that Jack was adopted, that he was the only parent Jack had ever known, that Peter had been cheating for over a year. The caseworker reviewed Jack's school records, talked to his counselor, and closed the case as unfounded. But the stress of it nearly broke Mark. He also discovered that Peter's family had been spreading lies at Jack's school. They told other parents that Mark was unstable, that he had anger issues, that Jack wasn't safe. A few parents started keeping their kids away from Jack. Mark had to pull Jack out of that school and enroll him in a new one across town. Jack didn't understand why he couldn't see his friends anymore. Mark sat him down and said, "Sometimes grown-ups do bad things because they're scared or sad, but none of it is your fault. I love you more than anything and we are going to be okay." Jack hugged him and said, "Can we get pizza tonight?" They ordered pizza and watched a movie. Mark cried in the bathroom again. The court date came. Mark had all the evidence. The text messages between Peter and Allison, the voicemails from Peter's mother, the Facebook posts where Allison bragged about being with her first love again. Mark's lawyer asked Peter on the stand, Why did you tell your husband you were cutting off your family while secretly still visiting them? Peter stammered. He said he didn't want to hurt Mark. The judge didn't buy it. She granted Mark full custody. Peter got supervised visitation twice a month. Mark moved 3 states away. The last update he posted was 6 months ago. He said Jack was thriving, had a new best friend, and was in therapy. Mark said he still had nightmares, but he was finally sleeping through the night. And my coworker situation, that one kept escalating even after Casey was fired. About 2 weeks after Casey got the boot, I started getting anonymous emails. They were from a burner account. The subject lines were things like "faker exposed" and "you won't get away with this." The emails had photos of me from the office parking lot, from the grocery store, even from my own neighborhood. I knew it was Casey. I forwarded everything to the police. They traced the IP address to a library computer but no cameras, so they couldn't prove it was Casey. But they did file a harassment charge based on the pattern of behavior. My boss, Amy, set up a meeting with corporate security. They offered to move me permanently remote, which I took. They also gave me a 2-week paid leave because of the stress. I spent that time with my family trying to decompress, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Casey was still out there somewhere watching. Then 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. It was hand-addressed, no return label. I opened it and found a single piece of paper. In block letters it said, "You ruined my life, I hope you rot." I didn't even panic. I just called the police and filed a report. They said they'd increase patrols near my house. My husband bought a Ring camera. My neighbors agreed to keep an eye out. I never found out if Casey was the one who sent it. But I stopped caring because I realized something: people like Casey don't stop until they run out of energy. They burn themselves out eventually, and I wasn't going to let her fire burn me down. I still work the remote job, I still use my cane on bad days, and I still park in that handicapped spot without shame because I earned it. And no amount of cameras or lies or anonymous letters will ever take that from me. So where does that leave us? Honestly, I don't know if there's a neat bow to tie on any of this. Sarah still hasn't apologized to my husband. Peter's family still sends Mark nasty letters. Casey is probably still sitting in some coffee shop refreshing a burner email account waiting for my life to fall apart, but it hasn't. My marriage is stronger, my son is happy, my health is managed. Here is the thing I learned: people will try to burn your world down because they are on fire themselves. And some of them, if you let them, will take you with them. I almost did. I almost believed Sarah. I almost doubted my husband. I almost thought maybe I deserved the pain, but I didn't, and neither do you. So if you are reading this and you are in a similar situation, I want you to hear me. Trust what you know. If you were home that day, if you had the receipts, if you are looking at the screen and remembering the time you went to check on your husband only to find him with his ex, or the time a colleague tried to film you walking because they could not stand the idea that you might actually be struggling, stop doubting yourself. You are not crazy. You are not paranoid. You are being gaslit by people who would rather see you drown than admit they cannot swim. And do not let them win. Now about that best friend of mine and why she did it, I think I finally understand. It was not about my husband. It was not about protecting me. It was about her own loneliness. She had been single for 3 years. She had watched me get married, have a baby, build a life. And instead of being happy for me, she let the envy rot her from the inside. So she invented a reason to blow it all up. She told herself she was saving me, but really she was trying to pull me down into the hole she was living in. I do not hate her anymore. I just feel sad for her. But I also do not answer her calls. You can feel sad for someone and still protect yourself. And as for Mark, he is doing okay. He texted me a few months ago. He said Jack asked to call Peter for his birthday. Mark said yes. He let Jack leave a voicemail. Peter never called back. Mark said it broke his heart for about a day. Then Jack came downstairs with a Lego spaceship he built, and Mark realized that Jack was going to be fine. Kids are resilient. They know who shows up, and Mark shows up every single day. That is the real update, not the dramatic courtroom scenes or the final confrontation. It is the quiet morning after, the cereal bowl in the sink, the movie rental on a Friday night, the moment when you realize you survived something and you are still standing. That is the ending of every one of these stories. The person who was wronged wakes up the next day, and they keep living. And you know what? That coworker situation, it kept getting darker. After I got that handwritten letter, I thought maybe it would stop. But then I started seeing a car parked across the street from my house. Same make, same color every night for a week. I wrote down the license plate and called the police. They ran it. It was registered to Casey's brother. I told the officer this is a continuation of the harassment. She was fired for stalking me and now her family is doing it. The officer sighed. He said, "Ma'am, we can't prove it's her. It could be anyone driving that car." I said, "I'm black, I have a chronic pain condition and I've filed 3 reports already. Are you really telling me you can't do anything?" He got quiet. Then he said, "I'll increase patrols." That was it. I hung up and cried in my kitchen, not because I was scared, but because I knew exactly why he wasn't taking me seriously. I'm a black woman in Texas with a disability. I'm not the victim the system wants to protect. Amy, my boss, called me the next day. She said corporate security had flagged the IP address from the email that sent the photos from my neighborhood. It traced back to a coffee shop 2 blocks from Casey's apartment, but without a warrant, they couldn't get the security footage. Amy said, "We're going to file a restraining order on behalf of the company. You're not alone in this." That helped. A little, but every time I went to the grocery store, I looked over my shoulder. I started wearing a hat and sunglasses. I stopped going to my favorite park. My husband said, "Babe, you can't let her win." I said, "I'm not letting her win, I'm protecting myself." Then 6 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "I saw you at the park yesterday. You looked happy. I wonder how long that will last." I knew it was Casey. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Amy and the police. The police said they'd investigate. They never called back, so I made a decision. I moved, not far, just to a different apartment complex on the other side of town. I told only my family and Amy. I changed my phone number. I stopped posting on social media entirely. My husband said we shouldn't have to run. I said, "We're not running, we're putting distance between us and the fire." And it worked. I haven't heard from Casey in 8 months. I don't know if she's still obsessed or if she found another target. But I'm not waiting to find out. As for Sarah, the best friend who tried to blow up my marriage, I got a message from her about a week after I cut her off. She said, "I was just trying to protect you. I swear I saw something." Maybe I misremembered the date. I didn't even answer, I just blocked her. Then her mom called me. She said, "Sarah is so upset. She says you overreacted. She loves you like a sister." I said, "She told me my husband was cheating on me with our toddler in the car on a day I was home with him the whole time. That's not love, that's sabotage." Her mom got defensive. She said, "You're being dramatic. She made a mistake." I said, "If that's a mistake, I don't want to see what a lie looks like." I hung up. That was the last conversation I had with anyone in Sarah's life. About 3 months later, I ran into one of our mutual friends at the gym. She told me Sarah had started dating a guy from work. She also said Sarah had told everyone that I cut her off because she caught my husband cheating and I couldn't handle the truth. I laughed. I said, "Did she also tell you?" She described the other woman in detail, and I proved I was home with my husband the whole day. The friend looked uncomfortable. She said, "Well, she said you were lying." I said, "I have screenshots of the weather alert and my location sharing." The friend didn't say anything. I just smiled and walked away. Some people want to believe the lie because it's easier than admitting their friend is a liar. I don't think about Sarah much anymore. But when I do, I feel sorry for her. She's 30 years old and she's still trying to tear down other women instead of building her own life. That's a lonely way to live. Now for Mark's update. After the custody hearing, Peter tried to appeal. He hired a new lawyer and claimed that Mark was alienating Jack from his biological mother, even though Allison had no legal rights. The appeal was denied within a month. The judge wrote in her decision that Peter's family had engaged in a pattern of harassment and manipulation. She ordered Peter to pay Mark's legal fees. Mark used that money to move 3 states away, like I said. But what I didn't mention is the day after the move, Peter showed up at Mark's new apartment. He had driven 12 hours straight. He knocked on the door. Mark opened it and Peter was crying. He said, "I made a huge mistake. I love you. I want to come home." Mark said, "You brought your ex-wife into our bedroom on our son's birthday. You let your mother call CPS on me. You told the court I was unstable. You don't get to cry on my doorstep." Peter said, "I was weak. I was scared of my family." Mark said, "And I'm scared of you." He closed the door. Peter stood there for an hour. Mark called the police. They told Peter to leave or he'd be arrested. He left. That was the last time Mark ever saw him. Jack is 8 now. He's in 2nd grade. He still asks about Peter sometimes, but not as much. He calls Mark Dad. He doesn't remember Allison. Mark started dating a guy named Tom about a year ago. Tom is a teacher. He's patient. He brings Jack books about space. Mark told me, "For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe." They're not engaged yet, but Mark said they're talking about it. I'm happy for him. As for me, I'm still with my husband. We're stronger than ever. Every time I think about that day, I remember the look on my husband's face when I told him what Sarah said. He didn't get angry. He just looked sad and said, "I can't believe she would do that to you." And I knew right then that he was the one. He's the one who holds me when I wake up from nightmares about Casey still sending letters. He's the one who makes me breakfast on days when my pain is a 7. He's the one, so that's where we are now. 3 stories, 3 betrayals, 3 people who tried to destroy someone else because they couldn't handle their own pain. Sarah lost a friend. Casey lost her job and maybe her freedom if she keeps pushing. Peter lost his son and his husband, and the rest of us, we're still here. We're still waking up every morning and choosing to keep going. That's not a happy ending, it's a real one, and honestly, that's better. But I never told you the full story of that conversation in the car with Sarah. When she launched into that description, she didn't just say making out. She went into detail. She said the woman was blonde, tall, wearing a white dress, and that my husband had his hand on her lower back. She said my son was in the car seat in the back and my husband was leaning into the driver's side window. She said the woman laughed and touched his chest. I sat there in the driver's seat of my car, gym bag still on the floor, heart pounding, but I didn't cry. I just asked, "And you're sure it was Wednesday at 11 a.m.? She nodded, eyes wide with fake sympathy. "Yes, I was driving to pick up my dry cleaning and I saw them." I almost crashed. Then I pulled out my phone, I opened my location history. I showed her the little blue dot that had been at my house all day. I showed her the weather alert that had canceled my trip. I said, Sarah, I was home, he was home, we made pancakes together. I have a picture of my son eating a pancake shaped like a bear at 10:58 a.m. She stared at the screen. Her face went pale. Then she said, well, maybe it was another day. I just wanted to tell you what I saw. I said, you told me 3 times it was Wednesday. You said it 3 times. She started fumbling. I must have mixed up the days. The weather was bad all week, you know. I didn't scream. I just said, I think you need to leave my car. She got out without another word. I sat there for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel. I thought about every time I'd told her about my work trips, every time she asked when I'd be out of town, every time she offered to watch my son. That was when everything changed. I didn't just lose a friend. I realized I had never really had one. That night, my husband came home and I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, do you think she wanted us to break up? I said, I think she wanted me to be a single mom. She always talked about how much more time she'd have if she didn't have a husband. I guess she wanted me to join her club. He put his hand on mine. What do you want to do? I said, I want to block her. I want to never speak to her again, and I want to tell every mutual friend exactly what happened. He said, then do it. So I did. I called our closest friend Megan. I told her the whole story. Megan was quiet for a long time. Then she said, she told me last week that you were having marriage problems. She said you cried to her about it. I felt my stomach drop. I never cried to her about anything. I told her I had a headache once. Megan sighed. I think she's been running a campaign against you for a while. That was the part that broke me, not the lie itself, but the realization that it was part of a pattern. Sarah had been planting seeds for months. Little comments about how my husband seemed distant, how I looked tired, how maybe I should take a vacation alone. I'd brushed them off as concern, but now I saw them for what they were, groundwork. She was building a case against my marriage so that when the big lie came, I'd be primed to believe it. Except I didn't, because I knew my husband. I knew the shape of his face when he was lying, and I knew the way he held my son. He's not a perfect man, but he is a present one. And that morning he had been standing in our kitchen flipping pancakes, singing along to a kid's song while our son giggled on the floor. There was no other woman. There was only love and cheap maple syrup. Now let me take you back to Mark's hotel room. After he left the birthday party with Jack, he drove back to the hotel in a daze. He put Jack in bed, read him a story, and then sat on the bathroom floor with the door closed, trying not to throw up. He called his sister. She said, you need to leave him, not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Mark said, I can't. Jack loves him. She said, Jack loves the person he thought Peter was. That person doesn't exist. Mark cried into the phone. Then he did something I never told you. He went through Peter's suitcase. He found a burner phone in the side pocket. It had text to Allison from that morning. I can't wait to see you. I'll meet you in my old room after cake. I miss you. I never should have left you. Mark took screenshots of every single message. Then he put the phone back and went downstairs to the lobby. He sat there until 2 a.m. when Peter finally came in, smelling like her perfume. Mark just looked at him. Peter tried to explain, but Mark held up his hand. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow morning. Don't come near me or Jack again without a lawyer. Peter's face crumpled. He said, you can't do that. It was one mistake. My family pressured me. Mark said, you are a grown man. You chose to take off your clothes with your ex-wife on your son's birthday. That's not pressure. That's decision. He walked to the elevator. He never looked back. The CPS visit happened a week later. 2 women in suits showed up at Mark's apartment. They said they'd received an anonymous report alleging that Mark was unstable and that Jack was unsafe. Mark invited them in. He made them coffee. He showed them Jack's room, his school papers, his medicine cabinet. They asked Jack questions. Jack said, my daddy loves me. He makes me pancakes. The caseworker wrote something down. Then she asked Mark, is there a reason someone would file a false report? Mark said, yes, my husband's family. They're homophobic and they want me out of the picture. The caseworker nodded. She closed her notebook. We see this more often than you'd think. We'll mark this as unfounded. Mark thanked her. After they left, he sat on Jack's bed and thought about the next 20 years. He was 27 years old and he was already exhausted. But he also felt something new, free. I wish I could say that after Mark and Jack got their fresh start, the world stopped being cruel. But it didn't. Right around the same time, another story hit the chronic pain forums and it shook me. It was posted by a woman who had been living with constant pain for years. She worked 2 jobs, had a handicap placard, used canes on bad days. She'd just been moved to a new location closer to home and she thought her new team was great. Then she met Casey. Here's how she told it. I'm going to try to do it justice. I'm a 32-year-old woman with chronic pain. I've had it since I was a teenager, but it got worse after a car accident in my mid-20s. I manage it. I work full-time as an assistant coordinator and I have a part-time gig on weekends. I keep busy because it helps with my anxiety. I was moved to a smaller branch closer to my house. My new boss, Amy, was wonderful. My coworker Casey was also an assistant coordinator and we got along okay at first, but Casey wanted a promotion badly. She had been angling for it for over a year. I didn't want it. I told her that. I'm not trying to compete. I just like my job and I like being busy. The trouble started when I had a bad flare-up. I used my cane to get around the office. I parked in the handicap spot. I took breaks to stretch my back. Casey started watching me. She'd stare from her desk. She made little comments like, you know, you don't look that bad today. I just shrugged it off. I thought she was just curious. Then one Sunday I was having a miraculous day. My pain was maybe a 4. I decided to go grocery shopping. I walked through the parking lot without my cane. I was wearing normal shoes. I was smiling. And I saw Casey's car pull in 2 rows away. She didn't see me at first. I waved. She froze. Then she raised her phone and started recording me. I thought she was taking a picture of something else. I ignored it and went inside. The next day at work, she was too friendly. She asked about my weekend. I said I went grocery shopping. She said, "Oh, I think I saw you. You looked really good. No cane, no limp." I felt my stomach drop. I said, "Yeah, it was a good day." She just smiled. A week later, I got called into HR. Amy was there with a regional manager. They had an anonymous complaint accusing me of faking my disability. The complaint included a video of me walking through a grocery store parking lot without a cane. The person who submitted it said they'd been monitoring me for months and had evidence that I was not actually disabled. I sat there in shock. I showed them my medical records, my doctor's notes, my handicap placard paperwork. I told them that chronic pain fluctuates. They said they understood, but they had to investigate. They put me on administrative leave for 2 weeks. I went home and cried. Then I got angry. I knew it was Casey. She was the only person from work who lived near that grocery store. She was the only one who had been staring. I called my lawyer. He told me to document everything. I started keeping a journal of every interaction. I saved every text. I even checked my phone location history to prove I wasn't lying about my pain level that day. I had been walking slowly. I had taken breaks in the store. When I came back from leave, Casey avoided me, but the damage was done. People at work looked at me differently. A few asked if I was really disabled. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went to Amy and asked for a meeting with HR. I presented my evidence, my medical history, the fact that the video was taken without my consent, and the timeline showing Casey had been following me. I also pointed out that Casey had made multiple comments about my pain level. HR took it seriously. They interviewed Casey. She denied everything, but they found other complaints. 2 other employees had reported Casey for hostile behavior. One said she had taken a photo of them in the break room and posted it on social media with a caption about their weight. Casey was fired 2 weeks later. I thought it was over, but Casey didn't stop. She started showing up outside my apartment at night. She'd sit in her car and watch my windows. I called the police. They said they couldn't do anything unless she threatened me. A week later, I found a letter under my door. It said, "You're not disabled, you're a liar, I'll prove it." My hands were shaking. I called the police again. This time I filed a report. They said they'd patrol my area more often. Then one morning I walked out to my car and found all 4 tires slashed. My handicap placard was torn off the rearview mirror. I broke down. I called my boss. I called my lawyer. I called the police again. They finally took it seriously. They reviewed the security footage from my building's parking lot. It showed Casey's car pulling in at 3 a.m. She got out, slashed the tires, and left. They arrested her the next day. She was charged with criminal mischief and stalking. At her first court appearance, she tried to claim she was helping me by proving I was faking. The judge didn't buy it. She was released on bail with a restraining order. But she violated it 2 weeks later by sending me an email from a throwaway account. The email read, "You think you won? I'll always be watching." I had to move. I changed my phone number. I changed my email. I started therapy. I still have nightmares about her sitting in that car. Every time I have a good day, I feel a little bit guilty, like I'm letting her win. But I'm not. I know my body. I know my pain is real. And I know that some people hate you just because you exist in a way they don't understand. That update came 6 months later. Casey was sentenced to probation and mandatory psychiatric evaluation. She lost her job, her reputation, and her freedom to drive within 5 miles of me. I still don't know why she did it. Maybe she thought I was standing in the way of her promotion. Maybe she just wanted someone to kick, but I know that I'll never forget the look on her face when she saw me walking without my cane. It was pure hatred, and that's the thing about these stories. The people who try to destroy you, they're not always strangers. Sometimes they're the ones sitting next to you at work, smiling at you over coffee while they plan how to tear your life apart. But speaking of friends who turn on you, there was another story that made the rounds around the same time. This one was about a best friend who tried to destroy a marriage with a lie so stupid it would have been funny if it wasn't so cruel. I'm going to try to tell it the way the original poster did because the details still make my blood run cold. I'm Tunin. I met my best friend Sarah and my husband when I was 1. My family had just moved to a new country and my sister-in-law introduced me to Sarah. We became inseparable. We shared friends but also had our own separate groups. I thought we were closer than sisters. Then last week happened. I work in an office from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. I have a 30-minute break where I usually grab a second breakfast, sometimes at a cafe or at my husband's office, which is a 5-minute walk away. My husband and I have a 2-year-old. I often mention to Sarah if I have to travel for work, just in casual conversation. Last week I was supposed to travel for work on Wednesday. But Tuesday night a red alert came through about severe weather the next day. My work trip was canceled, so I stayed home with my son. My husband went out at 6 a.m. to check on his business and put up flood protection. By 7:30 I was back home making breakfast. It didn't even start raining until 1 p.m., so we were home all day, the three of us. At 3 p.m., Sarah texted me asking if I was home already because it was flooding where I'd been supposed to travel. I texted back home safe. We didn't leave the house until Friday. Saturday we went to our usual gym class together. After class, Sarah looked serious. She said we needed to talk in private. We went out to my car. She looked at me with this concerned expression and said, "On Wednesday I saw your husband with a woman. They were making out and your kid was in the car." I froze. My brain went blank. Then I remembered I was home with my husband and baby all Wednesday. I realized she was lying, but I couldn't process why. I asked her 3 times if she was sure it was this past Wednesday. She said yes 3 times. I asked what time. She said around 11 a.m. I asked if it was during the red alert. She said yes. I asked if she was 100% sure. She launched into this whole description, my husband making out with a gorgeous blonde woman, the baby in the car seat, the whole picture. She was so detailed, I let her finish. Then I said very quietly, "That's impossible." Wednesday I was home with my husband and our son all day. We never left the house. The trip was canceled because of the storm. Her face went white. She started stammering. "Oh, maybe it was another day. I must have mixed up the dates." I asked again. "Are you sure it was Wednesday?" She said maybe it was Tuesday. I said Tuesday he was at work all day and I was at the office. She started backtracking, saying maybe she saw someone who looked like him. I just stared at her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I said, "Sarah, you just tried to convince me my husband cheated on me with a detailed lie." "Why?" She started crying and saying she was just looking out for me. She was worried. She must have been mistaken. I told her I needed space and drove home. That night I told my husband everything. He was furious. He wanted to confront her. I told him to let me handle it. The next day I texted Sarah and said I was ending the friendship. She called me crying, saying she didn't know what came over her. She loved me. I hung up. Then I started hearing from mutual friends. Apparently Sarah had been making up stories for years. She told one friend that I was jealous of her because she was prettier. She told another that my husband had flirted with her. People had noticed but never said anything because they thought it was petty. I realized she was trying to sabotage my marriage. Why? Maybe she wanted me to be single again so we could hang out more. Maybe she was jealous of my life. I don't know. I blocked her everywhere. The weirdest part was a few weeks later I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Sarah using a friend's phone. She said she was sorry and that she had been in a dark place. She said she had been going through therapy and realized she had been acting out because she felt left behind. I didn't respond. I can't trust her, and I can't risk her trying something again. I still think about her sometimes. We were friends for 18 years. That's almost my whole life. And she threw it away with a lie so stupid she didn't even check the weather. I guess that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always come from someone you expect to hurt you. Sometimes it comes from the person you thought knew you best. These stories, they all have the same thread. Someone who wants to take what you have because they think you don't deserve it, or because they think they deserve it more, or because they're just so broken inside that they need to break someone else. I used to think that if I was a good person, good things would happen, but that's not how it works. People lie, people cheat. People follow you to grocery stores and slash your tires and tell you your husband is cheating when he's making you breakfast in a flood warning, so you learn to trust your gut. You learn to document everything. You learn that sometimes the only happy ending is walking away and starting over, and you learn that you can survive it. You can pack up your son and your memories and move to a new city. You can find a new job and a new therapist and a new normal. And maybe one day, years from now, you'll look back and realize that the freedom you found was worth the pain you went through to get it. I think about Mark and Jack. I think about the woman with chronic pain. I think about the woman whose friend tried to destroy her marriage with a fairy tale. And I think about myself sitting in a different apartment now with a new phone number, still flinching every time I see a car parked outside my building. But I'm still here, and I'm still standing, and that's the only ending that matters. But there's another story that haunts me almost as much as my own. This one came from a guy who thought he had finally found his happy ending. He was 27, married to a man named Peter who was 37. They'd been together for 6 years, married for 3. They had a 7-year-old son named Jack, adopted after the wedding. Jack was his whole world. He loved that kid like his own blood. Peter was bisexual, which was never an issue. The problem was his family. They were homophobic. They never accepted the marriage. They were always telling Peter he should get back together with his ex-wife Allison, who was also 37. They divorced a year before Peter and Op met, but the family never let her go. 2 weeks ago, they went to Peter's hometown for Jack's 7th birthday. They wanted to celebrate with family. The party was at Peter's parents' house. Everything was going fine. Jack was opening presents, playing with his cousins. Then the mother-in-law decided it would be a great idea to invite Allison without telling anyone. She just showed up in the middle of the party. Op didn't want to ruin Jack's day, so he stayed quiet. He spent the whole time with Jack playing games, making sure he was happy. At cake cutting time, he noticed Peter and Allison were gone. He went inside to look for them. He searched the main floor, then went upstairs. He found them in Peter's old bedroom. They were taking their clothes off. He stood there in shock. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just turned around and walked back to the party. He refused to make Jack's birthday about his own pain, so he cut the cake, he opened the gifts, he smiled and thanked everyone. Allison and Peter came back downstairs about an hour later, acting normal. Then Peter pulled him aside and said, "You shouldn't have cut the cake without me, it was disrespectful." Op stared at him and said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." Peter went pale, he didn't deny it. Op grabbed Jack and drove back to the hotel. He put Jack to bed, then sat in the bathroom crying silently so his son wouldn't hear. The next morning he called his own parents and told them what happened. They flew out that afternoon to help him pack up. He filed for divorce the same week. Peter tried to apologize, said it was a mistake that his mother pressured him, that Allison had always been manipulative. Op didn't care, he knew that the trust was gone. He also found out later that Peter's family had been plotting that moment for months. They wanted Peter back with Allison so they could pretend the